Welcome. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. Thank you for listening. This is Joey. Let's get started. I wanted to start this off before I got into what I came to talk about today by using a reference or an example that I think a lot of people may be familiar with. And I wanted to also use that reference and join it with something that an expert in that field said. There's a notion that people tend to think, and it's low-key disrespectful, that the sport of professional wrestling or sports entertainment is fake. And I think that's a perfect analogy to use for what I'm trying to explain, where you think something is fake, but then you realize that it's actually much larger than you thought. Now, there's a wrestling manager, a legendary wrestling manager from the NWA era. That's the National Wrestling Alliance, not niggas with attitude. You can tell I'm a slight fan of wrestling here. His name is James Cornette. And he always has a quote that I love to use when it comes to wrestling. He says, people say wrestling is fake as if all the other sports are real. He said, I like to reply that wrestling is real. The bumps and the bruises are real, but the fights are predetermined. And I love the way he says that, because to imply that wrestling, the professional wrestling, is fake is to imply that all the hits and stuff are somehow completely faked and no one's really getting hurt and it's all just an act. When in reality, like James Cornette's saying, the bumps and bruises are very real. The injuries really happen. People really get hurt and or killed in wrestling, just like any other combat or contact sport. The only difference between wrestling, and this is where it goes into my opinion, the only difference between professional wrestling and any other professional sport is that professional wrestling lets you know up front that the fights are predetermined. I am flat out and blatantly stating that most sports, professional football, professional basketball, professional baseball, and of course, professional boxing and MMA, are much more like professional wrestling than you think. They are real combat, real contact, real competition-based sports where athletes are really going 110% to impose their will on their opponents. However, there is also money involved. None of these sports would be where they are without gambling. And gambling in sports has been run for some years by organized crime. So there's a lot more sporting events that are predetermined than you think. For people who watch, I watch a lot of sports. For people who watch a lot of sports, we've all seen the lulls of teams inexplicably letting opponents catch up to and including not taking shots that were working for them just a moment ago. Of basketball series in the playoffs going way longer than they should, right? Of referees conspicuously reffing a game in a certain way in order to clearly force a certain outcome. That's been admitted by NBA referees. It's even worse than the NFL. How often, think about this, if you're a person who, and it's smoothly done, if you're a person that's completely not involved in the betting world of sports entertainment, you've still been involved in gambling without even knowing it. If you've watched any ESPN show, you cannot watch a single ESPN segment and watch anything about the coverage of your favorite team or your favorite sport and not hear overtly obvious gambling references. If you hear anything about odds or who's the favorite or what's the spread, which you will hear in every single NFL game, on every single piece of NFL coverage. That's how we determine who's strong, right? You're already here. They're not talking to the sports fan. They're talking to the gambler. They're talking to the gambler. And we're not talking fantasy football. We're talking straight up Vegas gambling. They'll straight up tell you, hey, the odds makers at Vegas say this match right here is going to be an upset. They'll tell you straight up. There used to be whole segments back in the day with whenever you hear people talk about who's the shoe-in of the week or who's the lock of the week or who's going to be the upset, they're talking to gamblers. Billions of dollars at stake. Sports betting has caused sports fixing for decades. It's been going on since the Chicago Black Sox era. It's called points shaving. That's why the spread exists. It's a way for people to still gamble and fix sports without completely fixing the game. Okay, I won't fix it to where this boxer throws a match, or I won't fix it to where this guy's intentionally throwing the basketball game and throwing everybody off to where people notice there's gambling. But let's do a spread to where, hey, they're supposed to win by 10 points. Let's have him miss that last shot. They only win by 8, so we get the money. We just had a mysterious boxing match versus, who was it, Jermell Charlo and Castano, in which Jermell Charlo inexplicably fought a style that's not his style, that was built to lose. As soon as he accidentally hit the guy and stunned him and could have jumped on him like a boxer, and let alone a Jermell Charlo would have been known to do, he backed up and put himself on the ropes. He not throwing punches. He letting the dude hit him. Also, some fat, greasy gamblers back somewhere that runs a mob can rake in the money because nobody bet that there would be a draw. Inexplicable sporting occurrences that don't make no sense until you add the gambling odds to them, and then they make perfect sense. I use all this to point out an example, like I said earlier, of how you think something is one way or small or focused in one area, only to realize that this issue is much larger and much more all-encompassing than you could have ever imagined. And I use this to segue what happens with black people, both politically and socially, in this country and in this world. We are very much a seeing is believing kind of people. And the dominant society uses that to great effect against us. We're a very bottom line people. We don't care about the causality of something. We're trained, black people specifically. Nobody else does this. We're trained. Well, no one else does this to the degree that we do it. We have accepted in our minds that there is a limit to what black people are allowed to think about and consider when things happen. I didn't say that we don't have the mental capacity or that we're stupid or that white people are just smarter than us. I'm going to repeat what I said. We know within the dominant society that there are things as black people that we are and are not allowed to think about and or discuss. Let's just be real about that. We know there are certain things. If you start thinking too hard or thinking too deep in front of black folks, somebody will come along thinking that they're helping and try to correct you. They try to get your mind back on hustle mentality. Oh, hey, man, you got to be thinking about all that shit, man. You just got to put your head down and work, man. You just got to grind out here, man. There's money out here. Somebody's going to stop you from thinking too much and get you out of your own head and get you back to what's right in front of you. It's funny. We call everything slave mentality but that's another story. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's take the Bill Cosby case, for example. Now, if you mention the Bill Cosby case around black folks who are in tune with the dominant society, right? If you mention the Cosby case, or if the Cosby case comes up around you, You are only allowed to bring up the details of the Cosby case in the context of that nigga did it, right? You're not allowed to think about the nuances of the trial. You're not allowed to have questions or concerns or reservations as to the validity of the trial. You're not allowed to ask questions as far as the procedures and whether or not his civil and his personal rights were violated, his constitutional rights were violated, whether or not legal procedure was even followed or respected in the proceedings of this conviction, right? I mean, they were obvious about how they didn't care about really getting a real conviction. This isn't something where Bill Cosby got released because he's older and they let him go, or they just felt pity, or, hey, well, you know, you're an older man and you're no longer a threat to society, or we feel that you've atoned enough. No, they had to look at that shit and go, we violated this man's constitutional rights in order to get this kangaroo court conviction. It will not hold up in a Supreme Court. It will not hold up. Now, when you listen to white television shows that talk about what's happened with Cosby's release, and not just release, conviction overturned, right? Case thrown out. When you hear white shows talking about this, and these are white people who, during the trial, were vehemently in favor of and support of having this go through, even they talk now as if, well, the jig is up. Right? We tried. We held him in there as long as we could. But his lawyers are smart. They figured it out. They got him out. Game's over. Right? They only wanted him in there for a while to get him out the way anyway. So they're not really too worried about him being released now. When you hear the black publications, the Roland Martins, the, what's that guy's name with the beady eyes that's always talking about Palestine? He has 3 names. His name escapes me. You know who I'm talking about. It's the dark skin dude with the beady eyes. When you hear these people talk, Mark Lamont Hill, that's his name. It's the 3 names. I was going to call him Michael Clark Duncan. But anyway, when you hear the Mark Lamont Hills and the Roland Martins talk down to black folks on their little white sponsored shows, when you hear these people talk, it's clear that they still have their marching orders from white folks that they still got to put up the good fight that they think Bill Cosby is a monster. And they're not open to letting you actually point out facts about the ongoings of the case. The only thing they're going to want to talk about is how many people accused him. And they're also going to say that him admitting that he gave a woman quaaludes, which was the norm, which was the culture at the time in the 70s, you know, that the women would ask for quaaludes, and that the woman he gave quaaludes to was requesting quaaludes because it was something that people would use to come down off of a cocaine high. Something else that was common use back in the 70s, right? When he admitted that he gave a woman quaaludes, they used that to tell black people and the general public that he admitted to raping women. See, when you start really reading the documentation in this court case, and you start to really pay attention to the details, this is a very scary story of how the media can frame somebody. It's a very, very scary story of how the media can frame somebody. And they've put Bill Cosby in such a persona non grata position. They're in such a bully position that they can just dictate terms to you about what's going on. Evidence and facts and reality be damned. When you really break down the whole Cosby case, the only thing they really have is a guy admitting that he gave quaaludes to one woman. He didn't even admit to raping or doing anything afterwards. He just admitted to giving quaaludes to one woman. And this is another thing. This is another thing that the average black person is walking around thinking because of the picture painted by the court proceedings. I'm not saying any of this to just... No. Yeah, I am saying this to justify because this picture is very different. Let me give you scenario 1 and then scenario 2. And you tell me which one sounds like some creepy creepo shit and which one sounds like the party life, right? The scenario that they gave you is scenario one, where they make it sound like Bill Cosby's kicking it with a chick and she turned her back or diverts her attention from her drink or goes to the bathroom or moves around in the party for whatever reason, lets her guard down. And it's that time that Bill Cosby, like a sneaky Tom from Tom and Jerry walking through the door. It's at that point in time that Bill Cosby slips them a Mickey in their drink, and then they come back and they drink their drink and have no idea what's going on, and then I feel dizzy, right? That's the kind of picture that they try to paint that what Bill Cosby was doing. Now, if that was what was happening, clearly that's a horrible thing, right? That's a date rapist. That's a rapist. Just plain and simple. I'm doing something that this woman don't know I'm doing to try to intoxicate this woman beyond control to where she can't even move her own body, and then I'm going to rape her. That's a rapist. There's just no gray area with that, right? Now, here's the scenario that really has been happening. Bill Cosby and a chick be laid up in the cut high off of cocaine. When you're on cocaine, you're high and jittery and walking around looking like Richard Pryor or Bobcat Goldthwait back in the 80s. So when they'd want to going back to doing normal shit and come back down off of their cocaine high, cocaine used to always be cut with an opposite. This is how the basketball player Len Bias died. Remember, he was snorting up cocaine and drinking beer, alcohol, a depressant. So you have a lot of people back then, it was the norm. When you had cocaine, which was a stimulant, you would come back down with a depressant, be it alcohol, be it marijuana, or be it Quaaludes. That was the quick way to come down. You see what I'm saying? People don't remember that little line they said. Was it Scarface? And I think even Friday they quoted it. Another Quaalude, she called me in the morning. You remember that shit? He wasn't saying I'm going to date rape her and she'll call me in the morning. It was normal back then. His woman was tripping because she was high off of cocaine in Scarface. She was tripping, cussing him out. And he was saying once she comes down after popping that Quaalude, she going to be fine. She going to chill. She going to call me back. We're going to be good. Because it was normal back then for people to pop Quaaludes, high-end people. We know the E40 song talking about, you remember back when cocaine used to be a rich man's kind of high, right? It was normal back then for people who could afford cocaine and to live that life. When they'd come back down to go back into the square world, they'd come back down off a Quaalude. That was the move. That was the artificial way to get balanced. So what would happen is Bill Cosby will be messing with a chick that's high off of cocaine. They're both up. They're turned up. And to cool her down, they'd both pop a Quaalude. Or she would request a Quaalude. He would give him a Quaalude. Then they'd mess around. They were into some freaky shit. Bill Cosby was getting girls to mess with him because they wanted roles in movies and roles in parts. That's how Hollywood gets down. There wasn't no point in time where he's inviting innocent chicks over and he's, hey, why don't you have a drink? Oh, I'm just so dizzy. This ain't Baby, It's Cold Outside. For those of y'all that know the lyrics to the song, y'all know that really is a date rape song, right? So they painted that picture to where anybody who talks about the Bill Cosby case, you're not really talking about the Bill Cosby case. You're not really talking about the reality of actual court proceedings and documentation of what happened. What you're talking about is the accusations of Bill Cosby and how horrible they are. This is why whenever somebody would hear about it, they go, oh my God, if those things are true, this is damning, right? But we're not allowed to ask if those things are true. So we just focus on how damning it is. And what you should be concerned with as a regular person, even if you don't like Cosby, even if you're not black, what you should be concerned with as a regular person is that if a multi-millionaire legendary megastar celebrity like Bill Cosby can be brought down and imprisoned on a false accusation with no evidence for years, what kind of chance do you think your regular ass got with a regular, 5-figure 9-to-5 salary? What kind of money do you think you would have to stave off a media attack? Even not just you personally, individually, but even your entire demographic. What kind of power and coordination and organization do you think you would be able to muster up to fend off any kind of accusation against you in the media? Not much. Not much. Second question. Do you think that Bill Cosby is the only person on earth that the media has ever done some shit like this to? Third question. Do you think that there are people who the media has given the opposite treatment to from Bill Cosby, i.e. people who they've protected from media scrutiny when they had controversies and scandals going on? And what kind of power do you think they have to make those scandals and controversies go away? We don't think about that kind of stuff. Black people, we think the world is just the way the world is. And we love telling black people, we love telling other black people, and we love telling black children to fill them up with hopelessness. We love telling them, well, that's just the way the world is. As if the world was set this way directly by God to put them on top and us on the bottom. And that's just the way things are. So why even fight it, right? Except you realize that, like I said, like in professional wrestling, a lot of the outcomes are predetermined. A lot of the things are predetermined. A lot of things that happen in sports, in entertainment, in music, and in the news media, a lot of the things that happen, a lot of the things that are brought to your attention or not brought to your attention are done so specifically in an effort to elicit a certain mood and a certain attitude from you. If you look right now, let me give you a quick little example. This is the last sports reference we'll use. If you look right now, the United States Dream Team is losing matches left and right. And although I don't even know if they'll even face China, I'll predict that if they do, and this is having known nothing about China's basketball team at all, I predict that they'll either lose or win by in a squeaker, because you're supposed to get the idea now that America is on the decline and that China is on the rise. They know that the average American, the average human, doesn't pay attention to things like finances and stocks and international trade and military strategy. The average person doesn't pay attention to soft power tactics and infighting between different nations. We don't pay attention to that stuff. But one thing we will use to see the decline of a nation, to see a decline of a culture, we will use sports and entertainment. If we look around and we start seeing everybody's beating the United States teams in sports, and we look around and we start seeing that all the best actors are British. Well, I shouldn't even say all the best actors. All the actors that are getting work and recognition are British or from some other country. It helps to give you the notion that, well, that's the way the world is. That's the way the world is. Our time is up. If you see something like, let me dive right into it. There was a story out a couple weeks ago that outed deranged serial killer Charles Manson as a CIA operative and outed the seemingly out of context, seemingly bizarre action of killing, what was that woman's name? It was something Tate. Of killing that woman and her roommates and stuff like that in Hollywood in the Manson murders. That seemingly random, crazy act that didn't make any sense at the time was actually a CIA operation with the very specific and clear goal to incite some sort of violence between whites and blacks. The goal was to do these murders, make it look like black people did it or hippies did it, so that people would have a negative opinion on that free love era, and so that people would have a very, very scary opinion. Keep in mind that the racial tension at this time was very thick. So this was supposed to be the thing that set off the powder keg. I don't think we pay attention when people say phrases like the world is a stage. I don't think we pay attention to how many people out in the country and out in the world are intelligence assets, are people who aren't regular people. They're people who either are themselves or are unknowingly or knowingly being influenced by intelligence agencies to have certain actions that we as a public see to get us to react in a certain way. Let me give you an example. Look at all the rioting and all the civil unrest that's been happening in the last couple of years, right? Now, I believe that a lot of it is organic and is a reflection on how people are actually feeling. But there is such a thing as a critical mass. And if a critical mass on something isn't reached, people will be fed up, people will be upset, but action won't necessarily be taken. People don't wonder what's the difference between a bunch of people seeing something and collectively being upset versus a bunch of people who are complete strangers to one another seeing something so jarring that they're all driven to action. And not only that, they're driven to action that's violent and angry, right? What can make a group of people who do not know each other collectively see something that makes them go, oh, to hell with this shit, I'm just going to burn this stuff up, right? Those are real reactions. However, getting to that point of critical mass may not be always an organic or genuine reaction. Who is that person that throws that first garbage can? Who's that first person that says, fuck this shit, and starts tearing stuff up? Is that person really in the crowd, or have they been put in the crowd? And let me give you some examples, because this isn't just a black thing, but it's a black thing. Like I said, look at all the civil unrest in the last couple of years. Does no one find it funny? Look at all the major groups involved in all this civil unrest. Do you not find it funny that groups like the Oath Keepers and groups like the Proud Boys and even groups like the NFAC on the black side, that all these different groups all at once, all of their leaders got exposed, verified, undeniable, exposed as intelligence operatives? You had the leader of the Proud Boys get exposed as an intelligence operative whose job it was to form a group and incite them into certain actions like they're doing, right? To get all the angry white guys and whip them up into a frenzy at the blacks, right? Then you got the NFAC guy who's exposed. I mean, let me be clear on this. The Proud Boys guy and the Oath Keepers guy, or the Proud Boys guy and the Oath Keepers guy, were verified as intelligence operatives. The NFAC leader, he was not verified and confirmed as a CIA operative or an intelligence operative, but all the signs are there, right? Niggas don't go to federal jail and get released the next day. Let's just be honest. Like, if you did that in the streets, you'd be labeled a snitch. So let's just be real about that one, right? We got videotape of you doing security detail for Donald Trump. You don't get around Donald Trump on random like that, just being a regular nigga. So we know what's up with the leader of the NFAC, right? But my point is this. The point still stands. You got multiple leaders of multiple conflicting groups being revealed to be funded and enticed and operated by the same group, the intelligence agencies of the country. It just got exposed a few days ago. See, when you're working, people aren't dumb, they're distracted. People are working. They got 9-to-5 jobs. They got bills. They got kids they got to chase around. They got to argue with their wives and husbands and shit and find out the latest gossip. You only really got about 2 hours in a day to really sit down. And that's a luxury. It's a blessing if you get them 2 hours consecutively. But you really only get 2 hours throughout the day, the average 9-to-5 working person, to look over at a damn TV and figure out what's going on. Most people hear the news while they're getting ready for work, while they're driving to work, while they're on lunch break from work, while they just got back home and they're cooking dinner for the family. They got a few minutes before they got to cook dinner and get the house cleaned up for the family come home, or get those couple little, honey-do list things off the list. And you got the TV on in the background type of shit. But I'm sure you guys remember the whipped through the news broadcast and never really mentioned again story in Michigan, and how, because Michigan's the home of the largest militia in the country, I believe, the largest known militia. And they planned on kidnapping the governor in Michigan. Now, if you're just a regular ass black person and you just know that white folks be tripping sometime with the militias, you're going to think in your mind, yeah, that's something they would probably do. But I pay attention to a lot of those white militias and the day-to-day ongoings of them, especially the big ones like the Michigan militia. And I knew off top something was very wrong with that story, because that's a very aggressive, very ambitious stance to take for such a long-standing militia that's been borderline without incident for a while. They're very notorious, but when you actually look at their deeds, the actual militia doesn't really have that nasty of a record. To do something insane like that, that's a terrorist organization move, right? That's when you're going into the big leagues. You think about what's your next move after kidnapping the governor? You think you're about to just give him back and then go back to doing drills on Saturday like the feds don't know where you are? Like that's some Waco, Texas shit if you're going to be kidnapping a governor. That's major. And it didn't sound right. And now it's just being released that, yep, you guessed it once again, the people that were actually behind the plot to kidnap the governor were actually intelligence operatives who had infiltrated the Michigan militia. And every step of the way, they were the instigators of this plot. And the goal, it's called a false flag move. What you do is you go in as your enemy and commit crimes as your enemy to justify attacking your enemy. That's a false flag. I'm going to go in as my enemy and commit this fake crime against myself so that when people see me, quote unquote, retaliate against, quote unquote, the enemy, my quote unquote retaliation is justified. You seen that nigga attack us. We got to get him back. You saw what happened at Pearl Harbor. It's been verified that the agents working within the Michigan militia had infiltrated it in order to initiate this plot to kidnap the governor. So the federal government was going to try to kidnap a governor of its own government to justify cracking down on militias. So you got to understand the lengths at which your government will go in order to elicit a certain attitude from you. They wanted you to think, damn, the militias are out of control. Someone should do something about this gun control. Think about that whenever you see a news story. Think about the fact that it has been verified that institutions within your government will lie, cheat, steal, and kill its own citizens to get you to feel a certain way about one topic or another. See, it's all fun and games when it's Juicy Smouye pretending like he got beat by a Klansman in order to get some gays on an anti-lynching bill. That's bad enough in and of itself. But there are cases upon cases upon cases, and we're not talking about this as being something new. See, one thing I always watch that I find interesting, that I find scary, that nobody else cares about, every year, every couple of years, our intelligence communities will release and declassify certain things. And people will take the declassification to mean, oh, okay, well, this thing must not have been that big of a deal if they're declassifying it. And they're not realizing two things. One, they declassify things decades behind the time to where it's not relevant in modern times no more. But that doesn't mean that they're not important. And two, it's as important to pay attention to the things that didn't work for an intelligence agency as the things that it did. They're not going to tell you the things that worked. And although you may feel like, well, it didn't work, so why are we worried about it? It's not the success, it's the attempt. If you lived with me, if we're roommates or we're in a relationship and you lived with me for years, and then I openly confess to you that, we've been living together for 10 years, and I openly confess to you that, for those 10 years, I had been trying to kill you all this time. And I start to tell you all the attempts at murder that by the grace of God, you just got by. I don't know how you did it, but for 10 years, you've been unknowingly evading all my assassination attempts because I'm crazy and I've been trying to kill you, right? I've been poisoning your food. It just happens to be the food you don't eat that day. And you're thinking in your mind, dang, I've been having stomach problems all this time. This nigga been poisoning me. I've been cutting the brake lines to your car, but just somehow the fluid don't run out and you just be good. Just for whatever reason, you must just be blessed. And I've been trying to kill you, but I can't do it. Would you feel comfortable continuing to live with me? No, because you would now know that my crazy ass has been trying to kill you. It's known now. And common sense is going to tell you if I had been trying to kill you before, it's only a matter of time before I succeed if you stick around like a dummy, right? Okay. So every couple of years, the intelligence agencies within your government let you know that they have been trying to kill you, that they do horrible things to you, that they create moments sometimes up to and including injuring or even killing American citizens on American soil in order to create certain staged events that'll elicit certain emotions out of the general public. They flat out told you that. They flat out admitted this isn't no conspiracy theory or Alex Jones shit. I only talk about stuff that you can Google and verify that if you walked up and asked the head of the FBI, they'll go, oh yeah, we did that. It's not no secret. It's not no secret. They got verified attempts at blowing up planes with American citizens on it so that they could blame Cuba, of blowing up boats, of attacking tour boats and shit. Things to where they knew we're going to actually kill American citizens for real in order to let people think our enemies did it so that we can get the go ahead to engage with our enemies. This isn't something that I'm making up a theory that maybe they would have done. This is them flat out saying, yeah, we were going to do that. So if someone's flat out telling you we were willing to blow up an airplane or shoot up a boat full of innocent American students, full of innocent anybody's, right? Innocent anybody's from other countries. I believe the entire North Korean fencing team was killed on a plane attack one day. It was something insane. And I'll have the links up. If somebody's telling you that they were willing to kill American citizens in a staged, grandiose event in order to elicit certain reactions from the American public, how do you take that and then brush off the idea that 9/11 might be some weird shit? I would have to at least be open to the possibility since they literally said they're willing to do stuff like that, right? that they've literally have you ever looked at the CIA memos where they talk about, almost in joking fashion, all of the failed attempts they had to try to kill Fidel Castro? Did you look at some of the zany things that they tried to do, that if you told the average person, hey, I think they're trying to do such and such, the average person, rightfully so, would be like, you're crazy. No one's trying to plant explosives in Fidel's cigars, man. Imagine being the security detail guy for Fidel Castro, trying to explain to the rest of the security team, like, hey, man, we got to really be on point. These niggas is crazy. They'll do anything. Manuel, they're not going to try to make exploding cigars. All right. Let's not be crazy. They might use an assassin's bullet, but they're not going to send a cat in to try to kill Castro. OK, we're not going to have some women. All those things they tried. They tried literally everything to kill this dude. Literally they was attaching bombs to cats and shit. They will do literally anything to try to kill this guy. Now, does anybody think that's the only person they've ever tried that on? Like, the second MK Ultra came out, and what's always funny to me is people will hear about the MK Ultra experiments, hear about them, see C-SPAN trials about them flat out admitting that shit, and then go, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. How is that a conspiracy theory if it's been verified? Like, the people who did it are like, yeah, we did that shit. So there's no theory at any point. It's not. A lot of people don't know what the words conspiracy theory mean. And to be fair, there's something that happens with the meaning of words when they get used in a certain context in a social setting enough times to where they low key take on a different meaning. There's the dictionary meaning, and then there's the social buzzword meaning. And while conspiracy theory, at its core, the actual Webster's dictionary definition, if you just break down the two words, it's a probable collaboration between one or two more parties, often in secret. Conspiracy just means to conspire, to work together. And theory means I can't prove it yet, but I have, based on this logic, an argument, a possibility that this collaboration may exist. Conspiracy theory is basically just saying, hey, man, I think these two or more people are working together on this thing. That's it. You don't got to be part of the Illuminati to be part of a conspiracy theory. If me and you, if we're all working at an office and I think you and Jeff down in IT are stealing paper, are stealing Xerox paper, and you guys are working together to steal Xerox paper, y'all got a conspiracy to steal Xerox paper. Now, when I can prove it, when I catch Jeff red-handed and he admits it and shit and brings you in on it, now it's no longer a conspiracy theory. You guys have been confirmed in a conspiracy. You guys conspired together. That's all it means. You don't got to be sacrificing to Baphomet to be a part of a conspiracy. But with the way mainstream media is hitting people with authoritative journalism, and authoritative journalism doesn't mean that you know what you're talking about or that you're right. It just means you have some sort of air of authority. We're the most trusted name in news. We're the media. We have the biggest platform. So we can shout down to you and dictate terms to you, even if we're not backed up by facts. These are not conspiracy theories. These are facts of things that have happened that powerful media entities have worked very hard not allowing you to connect the dots on air. MK Ultra is not some conspiracy. This is confirmed by all intelligence agencies, right? So once you find out that your government is lacing its own citizens with drugs, and not only just American, going across the border, creating international incidents, harming Canadians, putting people on drugs in order to basically make them go crazy in an effort to try to control them. Two things come to mind. One, how do you at that point let anything be out the window or beyond the pale with you. That's the weirdest goddamn story you can draw out of your ass, right? It'd be like finding out that the government has been practicing voodoo. Right? You're like, wait a minute, they've been raising the dead all this time? They've been making real zombies. Yeah, make real zombies. And you find that out and it's confirmed and we just move on. So when the next thing comes out that the government is accused of or you're like, no, they wouldn't do that. But you already forgot that they make zombies? Like, what's out the window? What's too far once you find out your government is making zombies and shit? Conversely, what's beyond the pale? What's just too far with the conspiracy theory once you find out that your government has been attempting and slightly successful at goddamn mind control? At forced, induced mind control. See, getting back to not connecting the dots, it makes a lot of sense when you hear about MK Ultra and you realize that one of MK Ultra's students was goddamn Ted Kaczynski. And now some crazy dude who was sending random bombs to random people, because that's what we were told at the time, when we were experiencing the Unabomber era, we were told that he was just some crazy guy that lived in the woods that was bombing random people because he didn't like technology, right? And then you'd see that crazy frizzy-haired picture of him and shit, and you go, damn, this nigga crazy. He's just doing it because he's crazy. That's why he's doing it. He's crazy. And then you find out decades later that he was a math genius that was brought into, I believe, MIT, and that all these fancy colleges is where they would experiment on people with MK Ultra. And they drove him so crazy. And when he realized what they were doing, like a mathematician, he came to an inevitable conclusion. And he said, these people got to be stopped. Now, am I trying to make Ted Kaczynski a hero? No. But am I making him a human? Yeah, because now it makes a lot more sense. See, a crazy person in the woods just making bombs because I don't like techie, that doesn't make any sense. But a mathematical genius who was driven to the brink of insanity by drug-induced torture, who realized that the people that did that to him are going to be trying to do it to everybody else in the world through technology, yeah, he's taking them people out. That makes a lot more sense now. And I want to take all this and I want to point something out, because you can always use the truth to point out other truth. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound really blunt and really accusatory, but whatever. Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan Experience are tools of the intelligence agencies. And let me give you a couple ways how you can always tell. There's no such thing as a retired spook. Spook is what they call intelligence agents. There's no such thing as a retired intelligence agent. Whenever you see any kind of show, podcast, television, radio, any form of media, where they regularly have, quote unquote, retired FBI agents, quote unquote, retired CIA agents on the show, telling you what these intelligence agencies were like when they worked there, or telling you what these intelligence agencies may be up to now or what they may be thinking, you are listening to intelligence agency propaganda. That is an active duty intelligence agent for the country doing what he is supposed to do live in real time, and you don't even realize it. Think about it. Why would an intelligence agent, why would a member of our spies come on live TV or come on a podcast and tell you what we're up to for real and not be killed? You got former, quote unquote, former CIA agents up on goddamn Joe Rogan show telling you what they're up to. Come on. Be realistic for a minute. Here's something else I've always noticed funny about Joe Rogan fans and Joe Rogan Experience, right? Joe Rogan's show is known for having two kinds of guests. And by the way, I'm a fan of the show. I could still be a fan of something and know that it's a tool. But as long as I know that it's a tool, I don't let myself get fooled by what it's there for. It's like listening to old school radio or something. You know that those ads are the reason why those radio shows are there. But you enjoy I enjoy listening to episodes of The Shadow. So I'm just going to ignore all the Malto meal commercials and the cool Laramie cigarette in-show commercials because I know that's what it was for. But the show's engaging, right? But if you don't know what it's for, you'll really end up buying them damn cigarettes. So I digress. What I find really funny about Joe Rogan's show is that he has two main types of guests. Aside from just general celebrities, right? He has the general celebrities saying something interesting you wouldn't expect episodes. But then he has the episodes where he has the intelligence agencies on there, right? Which is the real purpose of the show. And then he has episodes. With big time conspiracy theorists and stuff. The chief of which comes to mind are Alex Jones, of course, and Johnny Bravo. I think he's a MMA Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu prodigy who has a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And they'll have these, you can tell that they're just old buddies, probably from the gym. And he just lets him come on the show and just start riffing, right? About every kind of conspiracy theory you could conceive or not conceive. Everything's on the table. Everything's open, right? So these people, they're open-minded to every kind of conspiracy theory. Every kind of conspiracy theory. But if you tell them one thing going on in this country that's conspiratorial against black folks, these same people will nut up and tell you it can't be true. Can't be true. Those blacks are just lazy. This is the greatest country on earth, and if you can't make it here, you can't make it. They'll go right into their spiel, which should let you know that all of it is bullshit. Because if you can believe every random conspiracy theory is at least worth consideration. But a nigga telling you what's going on with the water in Flint, Michigan. No, we don't hear that. A nigga telling you what's going on with all these dirty cops all over America and all these missing black kids and all these missing body. Y'all remember when honestly, I can't remember if it was California or Arizona. I'll bring the story back up because it's worth bringing back up. Y'all remember when there was a human body parts chop shop that showed up in like California or Arizona or something? And there was like fetuses in jars and penises in jars and stuff and heads floating around in jars and all these body parts that was just in some thought to be defunct medical facility. I cannot remember if it was in Arizona or California. I'll bring the story up. But that was on the news for one day and gone. One day. Human remains, like a full facility of hundreds of bodies and body parts found in a fully professionally stocked and stored facility. Like picture just walking by an old defunct hospital every day, and then you find out after 10 years that hospital wasn't defunct and they was doing ungodly experiments and dissecting humans in there. And it's just empty now. And you're like, how long was this shit going on? Who was operating this? There never was another single story on that big ass story. And this story came out, and this is probably why I think it's in California. A few days later, there was a similar story about a cache of weapons being found in California where some random dude had like over 3,000 assault rifles. But I'm going to bring that story up with the human body parts. And I'm doing this to show you a lot of those human body parts were black people. And these type of stories, which point to clear conspiracies of things, right? I mean, actual conspiracies involving like judges and shit and sheriffs in the town, like some classic old school true detective conspiracy shit, right? And they'll look right past it every time. When we say the world is a stage, when we say the world is a simulation, I think a lot of black folks get it fucked up and think that we're saying that literally the world is some sort of a computer simulation that can be. No, that's not what I'm saying. When I'm saying the world is a stage and I'm saying the world is a simulation, I'm saying there are lots of people out in the world who you think are regular ass people living their life, minding their business, doing their day to day like you and your family are. But in reality, they are hired help for intelligence agencies. Intelligence agencies don't just sit back and listen and spy and see. Intelligence agencies push intelligence. They push sometimes they push a riot out. Sometimes they push a terrorist act like the ones I pointed out to you. That Michigan kidnapping plot was clearly a plot to elicit a certain attitude in the American people that something needs to be done about all this gun control. Something needs to be done about all these gun-toting, AR-15 wielding, military camouflage hat wearing militia heads. You have tons and decades of verified proof from said intelligence agencies openly admitting, due to what they consider statute of limitations on morality, openly admitting to doing ungodly things to innocent people all over the world in order to maintain an American way of life. We'll bomb innocent people. We'll poison their fields and their farms in order to keep a banana one price. Right? Just so Americans can enjoy delicious bananas. We'll do whatever to keep things the way we need them to be. You've been told this, and still you want to brush that to the side. If you look at the Joe Rogan podcast, this is crazy. You're a podcast built on conspiracy theories and anything's real and all this kind of shit. And it's not like they go out of their way to prove any of these conspiracy theories they believe in. They just talk about, yeah, man, I heard that so-and-so on the moon, I heard space is fake. And they'll just fucking roll with it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they believe it, but they're willing to have the conversations, right? Go look at the one video and all the because anybody who watches Joe Rogan's podcast knows he got like 3 pictures that are always up. It's a picture with him looking like he's really intrigued by what they're saying, whoever he's talking to. It'll be a picture of the guest, or there'll be that picture of Joe Rogan with his eyes bugged out, right? He's like, he just got told something that blew his mind. I watched the podcast. I watched the show. I don't like it now that it switched to Spotify. I don't like that they censor them. But if you look at this podcast on YouTube right now, the only podcast episode where right in the picture, he's looking at the picture like, man, this is some bullshit, right? Remember, this is Joe freaking Rogan, who will let you talk about any conspiracy theory under the sun. Anything. But the one episode he got where he's looking at the camera like, don't listen to this nigger, is an episode where he has a dude, and I don't listen to this guy, and I'm not saying what this guy is saying is gospel. But I'm saying, if you're Mr. Open Mind and you listen to everybody else, why are you giving this dude the business? When they had the black dude on named Hotep Jesus, you can look this up right now. If you look up the Hotep Jesus episode where he says that black folks were in America before slavery, again, whether you believe it or not, this is the one episode that you want to die on this hill of I'm going to fight against this. You's cool with hearing about space being completely fake. You're here, and I get the space is fake doesn't mean space is a simulation. That means they've been lying about space, right? You're willing to hear that. You're willing to believe the moon landing's fake. You're willing to believe that 9/11's an inside job and that John F. Kennedy was killed by the intelligence agency. You're willing to hear any of those cases. But one nigga telling you that maybe there were a few niggas in America before Columbus, and you got to stop and look in the camera and massage white people's insecurities and be like, don't worry, folks, we're not taking this nigga seriously. That's the guy that you can't stand. White supremacy, racism, white supremacy is the biggest standing conspiracy in the history of man. And to this day, white folks will still vehemently deny all but the most extreme and overt examples of it, right? Because what we don't seem to realize and grasp as a concept is that history, that's my chair, history is a liquid thing. It's a running fluid, continuous thing that happens in live time. And white people understand this as a society. This is why you see monuments and statues and plaques everywhere and museums. It's to try to, once history happens, it's already in the past. So in order to keep people's mindset the way they wanted it to be for how it was in the past, the way to keep people's mindset on things. Like, what do a lot of memorial plaques say, especially when they're over tragedies? Never forget. Because if you forget what happened, it could happen again, right? You won't see the signs. Never forget. Never again. In remembrance of these people. Now compare that to black people's place in this same history. And the goal becomes the exact opposite. The goal becomes, do not talk about it. Do not mention it. It's going to create racial tension. Translation, if white people hear about what they really did, they're going to get upset and it's going to make them more violent towards the blacks, right? White people have had to have, for their own personal comfort and to spare embarrassment, we've had to lie about their role in history, particularly in this country. We've had to lie. It's too uncomfortable for white folks, too unsettling for them to face the fact that they're the villains in our history stories. So whenever history is documented with regards to black people, it has to always be documented in a way that softens the blow and makes white people look better. And this has been flat out protocol throughout history. This is why in black movies, in black autobiographies, they'll just straight up openly admit, they'll just make up a white person in order to create an air, in order to create an attitude in the average person. Because the average person being born in modern times is not from slavery. They don't know what it's like. There's new people born every single day. And every single day, the only way these new people can be introduced to how things were is what they are told through stories, video, and history. And if what you were told in stories and video and history is that slavery was a sin, but it wasn't that bad, which is basically the notion that white media likes to repeat. It was bad. It probably shouldn't have happened, probably, but it was a necessary evil that wasn't that bad. The blacks are kind of exaggerating. That's the general story. If you look at the movies that cover slavery, that cover, and this is another thing. Black folks, when we say slavery, we don't even actually just mean slavery, do we? We use the phrase slavery to encompass everything from the minute we got here to yesterday. Slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, convict leasing, sharecropping, mass incarceration, medical apartheid, environmental racism. We just take all of that encompassing and just say slavery, right? Which, sure, and white folks use that. White folks use that to only talk about actual whip and chains roots slavery and go, oh, that was 1,000,000 years ago, as if to imply that the day slavery ended in the 1800s, that it was free ice cream and welfare checks for all niggers, right? When I say all this, I'm pointing out that white people in modern times, in 2021, slathered in all kinds of fake wokeness and forced LGBTQ training and classes and sensitivity trainings and all this shit in 2021 are still trying to fight against telling what really happened with black folks in history. You ever notice? Think about this. I bet the average black person don't even know when Gay Pride Week is, or Gay Pride Month, or whatever. You just turn around one day, you just see a whole bunch of rainbows and asses in the air and parades, and you're like, oh, I guess the gays are firing up the band. And we just let them do what they do, right? We don't know if it's a week. We don't know if it's a month. We see rainbows in all the stores. It's a totally corporate holiday that's backed by corporations that's really not that hard to do. They don't have no struggle like that. They get called, they get kicked out the family for a few months. You know what I'm saying? And somehow they've equated that to actual slavery. And they've gotten holidays and they're above the law now. And we just let it happen. We don't say shit. Asian Heritage History Month is in October. Every year. Low key, a lot of Asians don't even know about it. I've had full-on arguments with Asians that be like, well, how come there's Black History Month? And I go, well, why don't you celebrate your Asian Heritage History? What? Yeah, it's in October. Really? So you was crying and you didn't even know you already had a holiday. Hispanics got a Heritage Month. Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody's got a Heritage Month now. Have had it for a long time. But you ever notice that the only holiday, the only day or time of observance that ever comes around that gets met with resistance is Black History Month? Only when Black History Month comes up is when you get people asking, why isn't there a White History Month? Only when Black History Month comes up do you get people complaining about how Black History Month is racist. No one says nothing about pride parades or anti-straight. No one says goofy shit like that, right? Everybody else understands that people's day or time of observance is to explain why the hell they're here, what happened, the contributions they made. It's a time of reflection, but there's always ear plugging, la, 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 and kicking and screaming when it comes to black folks, because white folks know you can't play the black folk movie without having scene one, the white villain. You won't even really respect your own holidays if it comes to black people. How many times do you see white folk when the 4th of July comes or when there's a flag day or something? Hey, man, you got to respect the flag, man. They're so patriotic, right? It's so fake patriotic, right? Hey, man, it's the 4th of July. They're out there lighting fireworks, woo, and all that shit. But when an actual standing Army veteran is standing on a stage telling you the history of your holiday. Remember, this isn't Black History Month. This is Veterans Day. This will be a white people holiday. This is a holiday where you're supposed to go up there and be dressed to the nines in your military uniform and show how you used to serve the country and all this shit, right? This is where you're supposed to be having your hand, your right arm dang near cutting off your forehead. You're saluting so hard. Your hairline's receding. You're saluting so hard to that flag. You got a tear in your eye like the recycling Indian, right? You're supposed to be 1,000% down for that red, white, and blue. But when that standing veteran, draped in all his decorative medals and patriotism, when that standing general looking like George Patton is standing up there on that stage and telling you the history of the country and Veterans Day, if he mentions those niggers and how they had a part in it, cut that general's mic. They told that veteran, that white man, don't mention black people's part in inventing Veterans Day. We don't want them to get the credit for having invented Veterans Day. We don't want people to see that black Americans love the country and are patriotic too. We don't want them to see that, right? You would think, see, watch this. The types of white people, because there's different types of white people, the types of white people that cut that veteran off on that mic are the exact same types of white people that use the we don't got to pay the niggers reparations because we fought in the Civil War excuse, right? We gave you your reparations in the Civil War and we freed you niggers, right? Right? That's the argument. But when you want to use that same history and go, yeah, black folks was really honoring the fallen soldiers. This is how Veterans Day started. Cut that mic. Which part of the same history do you want to use? We don't even got to get into the fact that the real reason the North won the Civil War is because 100,000 black male soldiers saved the day because they was getting their ass kicked by the South. But that's another story. It's a whole other story. Whole other story. You don't want people to know that black people started Veterans Day. Why is that significant? But you want to shove down black people's throats that black people were, quote unquote, rescued by whites during the Civil War. People don't think that kind of stuff is weird. It's because white people understand that history is live and they're trying to rewrite it as it happens. It used to be easy when all you had to do to run history, to control history, was run a newspaper press, and news didn't happen until you reported it. It was easy. But now with social media, when news is just spilling out through the cracks, when you can be at a scene somewhere and say, oh, everything's fine here, this cop acted within the confines of the law, and then you turn around and somebody who was on the street when it happened recorded it on their phone. When you got cops going into fast food places to try to erase the video of them doing some misconduct, not realizing that they're being filmed, erasing the footage, and now they're caught again. The powers that be aren't intelligent or swift enough to keep up with the technology that's running circles around them. So what you're seeing happen now to the stage that the world is you're seeing, I'm going to date myself a little bit with this. If there's any young heads listening, you may not get this reference. This would happen a lot on comedy shows, but this would happen in real life too, back in the early days of television. Every now and then in the early days of television, something would come along and break the matrix. Somebody would say something wrong live on air. Somebody would have a nervous breakdown. Hell, it could be something as simple as they got one of them animal shows where they bring wild animals on, and now that goddamn coyote is trying to tear the host head off, and they got to go to commercial right now. And so what would happen is there would just be a scene. Sometimes I'm going to try to put a clip up, but these are real things that would happen where when the matrix would break down on television, because television is programming. There's not a single person or not a single moment that goes on television for no reason and without permission of the powers that be. They're trying to program you to see the world a certain way. They're trying to program you to see the world a certain way. You live life in a submarine, and the world you see on television is like looking out that submarine window. And you don't know what life is really like because you don't live outside the submarine, but you do see out the window, and they control the window. So when every now and then when something would happen on TV that was off script or went against code or broke programming, you would see them go to a screen that just said technical difficulties. Be right back. That was the emergency screen. If you ever saw that, if you've ever grown up and watched any amount of programming and ever saw that, just know you almost saw the Matrix break. There was a woman who was a news reporter live on air one time who was just talking about, she just looked in the camera and said, keep it in touch with television's love for violence and murder. Here's this. And she just blew her brains out live on TV. She's the news reporter. Technical difficulties. We'll be right back. Sometimes they got to go to technical difficulties so abruptly that you'll see the sign on the screen, but you'll still hear the chaos in the background. So it'll be some happy picture, technical difficulties. We'll be right back. And you'll hear in the background, oh my God, she's bleeding out. She's bleeding out. Like, they didn't want you to see that. They didn't want you to see that. They interviewing somebody in a news segment. I saw one time they were interviewing some guy in a news segment and he flat out said, yeah, yeah, I didn't want to go to that homeless shelter. He said, why not? He said, yeah, because they're killing people at the home. Well, we'll be right back to you, Chip. They'll cut them feeds. Now, back in the day, that's all they could do. They could just go to technical difficulties and just shut everything down. And it was crude, but it was effective because you didn't see what they didn't want you to see no more. They didn't have to be slick. You just couldn't see it no more. And back then, the process of being able to show that to somebody else was dang near impossible. You would have to have your VCR on the ready 24/7 whenever you watch something to record that one little segment of a snippet of something to then take a VHS tape all the way over to your friend or neighbor's house. Ain't nobody doing all that. But in 2021, you see a clip that look funny, you see something that look weird, you just hit that little share button and send it right over to the homie who's going to do the same thing to 1,000 people. Let's go back even further than that about how the media would have control of the things. When you hear back at ancient times, What's the first thing that would happen if a conqueror came and sacked a city? They'd go burn the libraries, because they understand these libraries, this media that you got, it's got control over your society. And I don't want you to have control over your society. I don't want you to aspire to great things and look at your people and burn all that shit down. And you're going to start with my programming. Because it was too hard to get rid of a book back then. You write something in a book, you write something incriminating in a book, that book is out there. Even if you make a new version, that original version that says what you said is in there. So the only thing you got to do is you can burn a book. And even then, when they come in and burn the city or sack the libraries, sack the public records, them things would still escape. But nowadays, you put something incriminating in an article, you put something up about Corona-19, the media puts something up about Corona-19 that ends up being a lie, they can just change it. We never said that. Show us where we said that. We have the article right here. That article don't say that. But just last week it said. An edit button, bro. Never happened. You see how the focus is so much on disinformation? Disinformation. We're going to deplatform you if you say something that's misinformation. But no one asked. Misinformation on what? I can't come out here and say that Pepsi tastes better than Coke or Coke tastes better than Pepsi. I mean, that's subjective. So does that mean the government's going to pop out and shut my platform down because I can't prove that? No. They don't got no problem with disinformation. They got a problem with people with conflicting messages from the government. Government don't care what disinformation is. Disinformation put out all day on television, all day online. False advertising, politics, people lying on. Hell, the government talking about shutting people down over disinformation is spreading disinformation. Look at Anthony Fauci. He got verified through that idiot's own emails that he was up to no good. Everything he said was a lie. But all he has to do, if you catch him in a lie with his own emails, if you put out Anthony Fauci's own emails with him lying, all he has to do is tap the president on the shoulder and say, shut them down for disinformation, even though you're telling the truth. So this ain't got shit to do with no disinformation. What it is they're realizing that the biggest threat to them controlling the narrative is the fact that the people now have the narrative. The people can talk to themselves without even talking to the government. The people can talk amongst each other without even talking to the powers that be. And this is upsetting the whole control economy, because you know what the number one tool for control used to be? If I'm telling you that leaders of these groups are being used to corral people in certain directions, what do you think happens with celebrity? If you're a celebrity, your job and claim to fame is that you can get people to do things they normally wouldn't do. Is that you can get people to follow your lead. That's what you do. You do it effortlessly. So, of course, if you're having trouble getting people to follow your lead, to do what you do, what you really have them do on behalf of the powers that be, that affects your value as a celebrity, especially as a black one. You know how many black celebrities are in trouble right now because they can't get niggas to take that damn vaccine? I wouldn't be surprised if I see Beyonce and Jay-Z on television doing PSAs to get niggas to take vaccines. We're about 6 months shy of that desperation. You know, when you see Beyonce, who don't normally talk nothing political ever, coming out telling you to vote for Hillary Clinton, and you're like, why they got Beyonce? So they really just think that we're dumb and just follow whatever a celebrity says, huh? Yes, nigga, they think we're dumb and we follow whatever celebrities say. If the commissioner of the NFL felt like the book ending, the chapter closing on the Colin Kaepernick controversy was getting Jay-Z to do the music program at the Super Bowl, yes, they feel confident that if we get some of your head niggers to do what we say, the rest of you niggers will follow suit. And they're mostly right in that belief. But this vaccine, it ain't working like they want it to. It ain't working like they want it to. Ask yourself also, if the goal was to get 80% immunity, right? And black people are only 13% of the population, why even come to us? Why does getting us vaccinated matter so much to you anyway? Remember, I just want black people to remember this. Before the cure, before the fix was determined to be a vaccine, there was a point in time in the early stages of this pandemic that the only cure was seen as respirators. Remember, hospitals were begging to get respirators. They had put a special contract up with the Ford Motor Company to stop making cars and to start making respirators. And people were dying in the hospital waiting to get access to respirators. Remember this? Respirators were the big deal. And guess who was the main people that weren't allowed to get access to respirators? It was niggas. Niggas was dying on the way to the hospital. Niggas was dying at the hospital in the emergency room because when it came down to a priority, it was white folks and white folks first for them respirators. So when you thought the cure was a respirator, something that doesn't need an experiment to check its effectiveness, when you thought the cure or the fix for relief was a respirator, you wouldn't let niggas nowhere near them respirators because those respirators was reserved for white folk. But now that the fix, quote unquote, with air quotes and question marks, may be a vaccine, an untested vaccine that requires experimentation to tweak to make sure that it works, right? We ain't never encountered no Corona-19 before. It ain't like we had Corona-18 vaccine waiting and we just say, oh, nigga, just add the one. Like, we've never had Corona-19 before. So this vaccine that they are rolling out is a new experimental vaccine. We'll say it's a new untested vaccine. It's a new untested vaccine. We don't know its effectiveness. We don't know its side effects. We don't know shit. It's new. And the only way to know what the effects of and the effectiveness of something brand new is to what? Test it out. Test it out. It's not just the fact that black people, 13% of the population, not required for herd immunity, are intimidated and hesitant towards taking an untested vaccine. It's not just that black people are on that, because if black people were the only ones tripping about this and everybody else was on board, nobody would give a damn. The reason why they're coming at black people so hard is because everybody, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, and everything in the middle, all sexual orientations and reading levels, everybody is goddamn hesitant on taking this vaccine. Because anybody with two brain cells to rub together is going to know that if something just came out, it's untested. And nobody wants to be the first on some shit like that, right? So guess what everybody's looking to do? Everybody's looking to see who's the group you're going to test this on first. Who's the group you are going to test this on first to see if it's safe? Give the life cereal to Mikey. He eats anything. That's black people to white society. And this is far from the first time they've used us to test vaccines and medication to make sure it's safe for human consumption. That's why there's such a big push to get black people to take the vaccine first. It's because they want black people to test the vaccine first. There's no way you can say this is a proven, tested, clinically trialed vaccine. There's no way you can say that. To be fair, The shit just came out. You know what I'm saying? So we get that. But at the same time, you don't have faith in it. Your people don't have faith in it. They want it to go to some people to where, because this is just the reality of testing something. This is the reality of testing something. When that new iPhone comes out, you're the test subject. They don't know what it's going to do, mass produced, mass consumed. They're letting you figure it out. That's why there's version 2, version 3, version 4. It's called consumer acceptance testing. We're testing to see how the consumers will accept this shit. Cat testing. And everybody wants to see, hey, man, if there are problems with that vaccine, I'd rather whatever goes wrong with it to happen to those niggers first so we can get them kinks worked out. Hey, if the vaccine's safe, if I see enough niggers taking it and I don't see them pop locking and shaking like goddamn chest busters about to come out their abdomen, all right, cool, I'll take it too. Testing on people is testing on people. So yes, this is very similar to the Tuskegee experiment. Because the Tuskegee experiment, I heard something very dumb on an episode of the Roland Martin show where they tried to say that this thing was completely unlike the Tuskegee experiment because the Tuskegee experiment involved not treating people with medicine, and this involves injecting people with the vaccine. That's probably the dumbest goddamn argument I've ever heard. And it sounds like something that white liberals cooked up in a think tank and gave to black people. Gave to those black boule handlers that no black person really respects. Experimenting on people is experimenting on people. As I just explained, whether you're experimenting to see what happens if we don't give them the syphilis vaccine, if we don't give them the syphilis medication that we have readily available and have had for decades, let's just see what happens if we don't treat them. And then on top of that, use our medical authority to gain their trust and lie and say we are treating them while we experiment on them for the betterment of our society. That's the exact same as saying, let's give some people an experimental medication that we don't know the results of, and let's sit back and see what happens for the benefit of our society. That's the exact same goddamn thing. You sitting there in a lab looking and seeing black men go into goddamn convulsions and burn away from syphilis while they think that they're taking a medication they don't know is a placebo that doesn't do anything, and you sitting back going, fascinating, is the exact same goddamn thing as you giving a bunch of people an experimental drug that you don't know the side effects on and sitting back and watching them writhe in pain as the medication kicks in and kills them and going, fascinating. In both scenarios, you are knowingly putting your patient in danger for the benefit of science, not for the benefit of them. If you signed a bunch of people up for some sort of a drug study and paid them $500 for whatever, that's on them. You start growing wings and shit and can't sleep at night, that's on you. But for you to bring some people in under the guise of syphilis treatment, or for you to bring some people in under the guise of a vaccination for treatment for an illness, and then little do they know they're a test subject. Yeah, that's the exact same thing as the Tuskegee experiment. The Tuskegee experiment was, let's use these niggas as guinea pigs for the benefit and betterment of white society. This vaccine, let's use niggas as a guinea pig for this untested vaccination to make sure that it's safe for white folk. It's the exact same thing. Has the exact same elements, using your medical authority to gain trust with the community and lie to them. Lie about the conditions of the medical experiment. Endanger these people for the benefit of your own personal group. That's why they want 13% of the population to take one for the team for the other goddamn, 77%, 87% of the population. When you thought the way out the tunnel was respirators, you wasn't trying to give no niggas no respirators. Because respirators aren't untested. Respirators don't have known side effects or unknown side effects. Respirators equal to relief. And relief was for white folk. It's like if you got, picture the Titanic, right? And you got the Titanic and they only got so many lifeboats. Now, there weren't too many niggas. There weren't niggas on the Titanic. But if there were, you know niggas wasn't going to be elected to get on them lifeboats. They said women and children first. Now, imagine while getting in them lifeboats, they looked over and seen some shit that looked like shark fins in the water, right? And they don't know if that's shark fins in the water. And they turn around and go, you know what? Change of heart, man. Black lives matter. We're going to let those niggers get on the first boat. They're testing you to see if there's goddamn sharks in the water. Just ask yourself why. You got the sitting president of the United States of America telling you on a recording, black people, you are now third-class citizens. I don't give a damn if there's fewer white people going to be in the country. We're going to put the Hispanics over you. If you want anything, you better get behind them. That's verbatim what that old shriveled up bastard said. But he wants you to be the focus on this vaccine. Remember when the coronavirus first came out, the Surgeon General of the country told the world that the reason you're dying at higher rates for corona is because you love fried chicken and rolling blunts. Never forget that. Never forget when the world thought the world was going to end, America had to get one last joke off on black folks on the way out the door. That was how America was planned to go out. Was we're going to crack on these niggers till the day we die. You was going to end the world on a fried chicken joke against black people. Do it for Mima. Do it for Pop Pop. Remember that shit? Do it for your abuela. America is so racist that the entire country can be gripped in a disease. And we will filter out the reason why people are getting sick based on race and go, yeah, the white folks are getting sick because their immune systems, and this is a really strong virus. The black folks are getting sick because they ain't shit. Like, think about that for a second. How does a disease be able to be communicable between two different groups of people based on one being just a sweet, pious lover of Jesus and the other person just ain't being shit and loves watermelon? That's how we got the disease, because we ain't shit, right? It wasn't because it's a goddamn communicable disease that's going around and we're the essential workers and we can't take days off and we out here without no medical attention. It's because we ain't shit and we sag our pants that the disease was killing niggas at a higher rate. It's going through goddamn Mississippi prisons like wildfire. They ain't treating nobody. Oh, I don't know how they're dying. It's just weird. It's just like they're just lazy. Like, that's how they carried the coronavirus. And now they want your black ass to be front and center for the vaccine. Testing. I just made this episode so y'all could just look around and see what I'm talking about, to where this ain't no conspiracy theory. They'll straight up tell you what's up. And if you don't want to put the dots together, that's on you. Like, they're straight up telling you every year they got a new declassified thing that they tell you, hey, you know that thing we said we wouldn't do and it was swamp gas? No, we did that shit. They're not even lying about UFOs no more. They're like, yeah, it probably is some aliens and shit. Like, so think about that. If somebody been lying to you all this time, why do you still believe them? All these people that mysteriously be getting suicided and, oh yeah, man, he died from 2 gunshots. How'd he die? Oh, from 2 self-inflicted shotgun wounds in the head? From a pump shotgun, huh? Yeah, man. So he shot himself in the head, pumped the shotgun and shot again, huh? Yeah. All right. We just believe it. Which brings me to my last conclusion. Ain't nobody damn sleep. I hate the term woke. I hate that it meant something for a minute, but you know, once white folks start using a term, the meaning goes away. I hate the term woke It doesn't mean anything anymore. And ain't nobody damn sleep. We all see this shit. We all know what's up. We all see this shit. Everybody sees it. But it's sort of like that Family Guy episode with the octopus they were all scared to acknowledge, and he's just knocking shit around the kitchen, and they're like, oh, it must be the wind. Everybody sees this shit. But what are you going to do about it? So when something bigger and badder and more powerful than you says, you didn't see shit, right, bitch ass nigga? You go, yeah, you're right. I ain't see nothing. Everybody saw what was happening to Bill Cosby. We knew that was some bullshit. But if you wanted to keep getting a pat on the head from the dominant society, that's what you're supposed to look down and go, yeah, you can't do that to women. It's just wrong. Well, he didn't do nothing. Well, hey, wait, if he did, it's wrong. We live in rape culture. Everybody knew that Juicy Smollett story was bullshit. But what happened when you called it out? Remember the day the Juicy Smollett story came out, they already had articles against black men and blamed us for it. Remember that shit? It was like the day he said, it's the white guys tried to lynch me. That afternoon, there was an article. It's y'all black straight men's fault. Y'all didn't you didn't help him. Why can't you be more gay? What? There was articles the same day. There was articles blaming black straight men for Juicy Smollett getting allegedly jumped by two white guys the day it happened. And there was articles blaming black men and homophobia the day it got exposed that he was lying the whole time. They used black men as an scapegoat going in and coming out. It's common practice in politics to find some way, any way, to create some sort of spectacle that you can then present as a problem, that your political ideology can then be used as a solution for. You want to get some gun control going? Go get someone to shoot someplace up. Kill a bunch of innocent people. Then you come in and we need to get gun control out here off the street. People will listen to that because a bunch of motherfuckers just died. When you hear people talking about crisis actor, bullshit. Them people really be getting killed. They be actual innocent people that be getting killed. The crisis actor be the shooter. The crisis actor be the shooter. Look at Charles Manson. Charles Manson was a crisis actor, but he was really killing bitches. He was really killing people. But he, the actor, is the person with the action. He's the one killing people. He knows, yeah, I'm in prison. I'll be here for the rest of my life, but I'm taken care of. I'm good. I'm cool. Or you hear about people that are always doing crimes and always getting away or always getting released. Those are agents. Those are. Let me use the right term. Those aren't agents. Those are assets. Those are people who work for handlers who are agents. Charles Manson had strict rules. You couldn't keep him in jail too long. He was always in and out of jail. They'd always get orders from on high to let him go. He's far from the only one like that. That happens a lot. Look at the dude's shitty cuz. What was known about him? The dude who killed Nipsey Hussle. What was known about him? He was always in and out of prison. He was known as an informant. People think informant just means snitch. People think snitch just means Huggy Bear from goddamn Starsky and Hutch, where he's, hey, Starsky, I'll tell you what I seen. No, they be having them snitches or them informants. This is why I use the term asset. An asset can be a physical asset to an intelligence agency. Hey, man, go over there and shoot that dude for us. Go over there and shoot that guy from the other gang. Hell, go ahead and shoot that guy from the same gang. His power's getting too high. You can get right next to him because you're in the same gang. Go kill him. Yeah, we know you're going to go to prison and all the members of that gang are going to kick your ass. We'll put you in solitary confinement. We'll do X, Y, and Z. We'll have you in a psychiatric ward. They won't be able to get to you. We'll pay you $75,000. Get you out of here. Get you a new life. You think witness protection is really just for witnesses of crimes and shit? No, that's how they funnel all the assets and shit throughout the country. Those people be intelligence agency assets that'll do whatever they need them to do. All your leaders in the civil rights movement was brought down, like all of them. It wasn't even nothing tricky. It was they'd rope up some random nigga, give him a trumped up charge, say, you want to work for us or you want to go to prison? I'm going to work for y'all. Okay, I need y'all to go in here and infiltrate Fred Hampton's apartment. Okay. That's how this shit work. That's how this shit work. And you got millions of people in this country and around the world who at any point in time can get that tap on the shoulder and say, hey, man, it's your time to move. It's your time to do something for us. And you know what'll happen if you don't. That's why in that movie, The Matrix, this is why they did. I saw it in an interview. This is why they did it like this. You remember the agents in The Matrix at any point in time, they could deputize or take over anybody and become anybody. You could be walking down the street, and if you were a wanted man, you could be walking down the street, and that homeless person that was asking for change, all of a sudden they're the agent, and the agent's chasing you. They did it like that for a reason, because with the spooks, what they can do is they can tap into a lot of random people, not by mind control or nothing magical, just by tapping them on the shoulder and saying, hey, man, remember that deal we had? It's your turn. You want to go to jail? You want to go home? People will talk all this magical mind control and be talking into their phones, telling secrets and not realizing they're reporting to these same intelligence agencies. The world's a bigger stage than you think. You think you're watching a movie. You don't realize you're watching one of them Alfred Hitchcock movies where they got like buzzers and shit in the seats and to really scare the shit out of you, to immerse you in the moment. You're more immersed in the moment than you think you are. I think that's as far as I'm going to go for this episode. I'm not trying to sound too Alex Jonesy, but play this back and point out something that I said that's unprovable. Point out something I said that was some weird magical runaway shit with the conspiracy. There are such things as runaway conspiracy theories where you just start, because it's not required to prove with evidence, undeniable evidence about a theory. And this isn't just about conspiracy. This is theory of relativity, anything. You don't have to, Albert Einstein doesn't have to go find a receipt from God saying, yeah, I made the theory of relativity. He just has to prove it by actions of how this stuff works, right? Because that's the case, because you don't have to find a smoking gun necessarily to prove a conspiracy theory true, there is such a thing as runaway conspiracy theories where it's just unfeathered, completely no holds barred theories on things without a lot of thought. I hear this a lot in the hip hop community when everybody's talking about sacrifices and all this kind of bullshit. Whenever something happens, because you want to believe all that shit, you look past the reality of what's going on. I watch a woman who has full-on seances about Nipsey Hussle and shit, and eyes be rolling back, and she be head shaking, and it looks real good. But other than for entertainment purposes, I don't put no weight on that stuff. You want to know who really killed Nipsey? All you got to do is go look through his email and phone records and look at his finances and shit, and you'll find out where the money was going and what was really going on. And it's pretty obvious the man was being extorted for protection. There's no magical hoodoo that you need to go access to find that. That's very obvious. Just go and look at his financial statements. But we like the runaway conspiracy theory. Him and Lauren London were involved in some sort of sacrificial seance and he got chosen and all. We love that shit. Niggas saw King Von get shot because of a fucking fight that broke out. And niggas are still, was he sacrificed by Little Dirk? And they got them dreadlocks. And I think the energy. It was the chakras. We just make shit up. Those are runaway conspiracies. This shit is not founded or grounded or based in anything. It's just feeling. But it's a dangerous thing to write off a genuine conspiracy theory, something that points to something, points to collaboration between one or more, usually powerful entities working in a clandestine fashion behind the scenes, and soul ties and magic and shit, right? There's a big difference between those two things. Big difference. But I want you to pay attention to that. Pay attention to the stuff that's allowed to be out there as misinformation versus the stuff that's not. You would think, and I hate being in a position where I have to defend a Donald Trump position, but Russiagate has been literally proven to be false by the guy who was doing the investigation. This is the guy that they told you this whole time was supposed to be the one that you put your faith into. And if this guy says this happened, then it happened. And he flat out said, yeah, we don't got nothing for that. So you would think by that same logic, the government would be like, hey, we don't like Donald Trump, but we can't allow for disinformation to continue. So we're going to be just as diligent on making sure that the truth comes out with this as anything else. No, they still push and are proponents of that clearly unproven conspiracy theory. That's a runaway conspiracy theory. So this has nothing to do with disinformation or stopping disinformation. It has everything to do with dominating a message. We've seen Anthony Fauci get called out on the Senate floor a number of times. We don't even got a good answer. But we're not allowed to think about that. So I'm going to let everybody kind of marinate on that. I know it's been a while since I've been on, but let's get back to it.